I'm Captain Max Dispoto from East Coast Charters. I'm at the Saltwater Edge today to talk to you about my favorite way to kick off the saltwater season. And I'm going to go through the basics of squid fishing. Fishing is something special for our area. Not only are they the first arrivals on the saltwater side of things, but they're accessible for everyone. You can fish for them from shore. You could go on a head boat and catch them that way, or you could take your own private boat out and not have to go far from shore to catch them. There's also good reasons to fish for squid. They're very plentiful, so it provides a sustainable meal for you and your family. It's a good way to stock up on bait for the season. You could freeze them afterwards, and it's just good fun to go out with your friends and catch them after a long winter of sitting inside. Let's talk about what you need to get into squid fishing. The good news is about squid fishing, you really don't need much. If you have a light tackle inshore setup that you use for stripers, albies, sea bass for the rest of the season, you're already halfway there. After that, grab some squid jigs, leader, and you're basically good to go. My go-to squid jigging rod is the Shimano Talavera Type J 6-foot light paired with a Shimano Spheros 5000 reel. You can go down as low as a 3000, 4000 size reel, really whatever balances the rod right. And for a rod, you want a light rod because you're really only going to be using 2, 3, maybe up to 4 ounces of weight when jigging squid. So you want it light enough to see the bite, but also heavy enough to hold the weight that you're using. Because of a lot of our squid fishing is done here at night, I like to fill my reels with 20-pound Power Pro Super Slick V2 in the color Moonshine. Moonshine glows under UV light, so you're able to see it. I use these UV light strips. Usually when squid fishing at night, you're using underwater lights or above water floodlights to attract the squid. So you have some sort of power source you could hook these up to, and then I zip tie these to my T-top, a seat, and when these are on, you're able to see your line in the water and as it glows. Now let's talk about squid jigs. Squid jigs are different from any other lure that we really use because they don't have hooks on them. They have prongs on them that the squid come up and grab, and the prongs can't latch onto their tentacles. There's many different shapes, sizes, weights to different squid jigs. Overall, it's usually a slender profile. Some have a slight curve to them, like this one. Some are straight, some have a bulky end to represent another smaller squid. But overall, usually small weight on it or floating, and then the prongs on the back, and that's your basic squid jig. This specific jig is the Shimano Sophia Clinch Jig. This jig got introduced to the market last year, and like any lure when it comes out, yeah, it takes time to gain confidence in it. You don't want to give up what lures you have confidence in and switch right over to these. So luckily for squid fishing, we're using high-low rigs most of the times, 2 jigs on each rig. So I would run one of these on the high or the low and have my traditional jig that I was using before that I had the most confidence in on the other one. And it seemed like every time I caught one squid, it was always on this one. So I kept switching it up, and eventually I gained enough confidence and it really outfishes the other jigs that I've been using. So now this is my go-to squid jig. As I'm holding this jig, you may notice that it looks like it's moving. This is Shimano's Flash Boost technology and what sets it apart from any other squid jig. Flash Boost is this reflective plate held by 2 micro springs that constantly shimmers light off of it when using the lure. This shimmering action of the Flash Boost gives it a lifelike action and reflects natural light off of it when fishing during the day, which is important because squid are highly visual hunters. And then when fishing at night using above water lights or underwater lights in the dark ocean water, when any of that artificial light hits it, it creates an innate, almost instant reaction strike from the squid when that light is reflected off of it. Now let's talk about the basic squid jig rigging. The traditional squid jig rig is a high-low rig using 2 separate jigs and a sinker below them. So going from my braid, I use a small swivel. The advantage of using a swivel instead of a line to leader knot is to prevent line twists. When dropping these squid jigs down using a sinker, the jigs are going to spin and will twist your line. The swivel should prevent that from happening. Going from our small swivel, we'll be going to a light fluorocarbon leader. I like sticking to the 8 to 12 pound range of fluorocarbon. The lighter fluorocarbon gives the jig more action when jigging them. We're going to be putting 2 dropper loops in the leader and then a sinker loop at the bottom. So starting with the first dropper loop, give it about 12 to 18 inches from your swivel, little space from your braid. And to tie the dropper loop, just double up your line, create a loop in the line, find the center point of that doubled up point and twist it 4 to 5 times, and then just run the other side of the loop back through the center, that middle point. When making these dropper loops, you want to make it just big enough to where you could fit the jig under, but not too long, so when you're jigging them, the jig will get tangled up around the line. The smaller the loop, the less likely it is to get tangled on the line, those prongs catching the leader. So right there is about the right size that I like for making these squid jigs. Gives it enough action, enough freedom, enough action, but then also won't get tangled as much. Then going about another 12 inches down from your first dropper loop, you're gonna do the same thing, make a second dropper loop. Double the line up, create a middle point in that doubled up point, twist 4 to 5 times, and run the back side of that loop through that middle point. So there we have our 2 dropper loops made, our swivel, 2 dropper loops, and then about 12 to 18 inches from there, just make our sinker loop. All you could do with that, a simple overhand knot, surgeon's loop, double surgeon's loop. Not using much weight here, won't really get hung on the bottom much. It's just a normal overhand knot does the trick. That finishes off your basic high-low rig. To attach the squid jigs to the dropper loop, all you're gonna do is pass the end of the dropper loop through the eye of the lure. Pull the knot through the eye of the hook so it's able to reach around. Pass it over the prongs, all the way back up and through the eye again, and it's attached. When setting up a rig, I like to do 2 different colors. This one I have the white and greenish one, and now for this one I'll do a clear, almost Wonder Bread color. I like to do, when starting off, not really sure what each day or night is going to bring, I like to do 1 solid color of these Shimano Sophia clinch jigs, and then 1 of the clear colors. It seems like day to day, night to night, 1 color will outperform the other, so I always like seeing what that day or night is going to bring and adjust as the day or night goes on. Here are our 2 jigs on the high-low rig that we made. 1 solid color up top, 1 clear color down the bottom to see which one for that day or night is going to bring. And when I tied the dropper loop smaller, you can see that they still have the action to work the jig when you're jigging it, but also they aren't getting twisted up and the prongs aren't getting caught on the leader. If you made the dropper loops too big, you would see more times than not you're going to get tangled, but these smaller dropper loops give the advantage of not getting tangled more. Now let's get into technique. As we were talking about squid fishing being so accessible, this is a great example of how accessible it could be. This necessarily isn't one of these spots. We didn't want to burn any of the actual spots in respect of everyone else that fishes them, but any of the public piers, docks, bridges, you can just walk down them, fish them, try them, and figure out where the squid are hanging, and you can really fill buckets by just coming down to any of these public places. Now getting into the technique for squid fishing, fishing from a pier, a bridge, a dock, or even a boat, it's all kind of the same. It's basic. I'm going to go into it, but there isn't much to it. Starting off, we have our sinker now on this high-low rig, and I always start off by going straight to the bottom. At night, they usually come up higher in the water column, but during the day, tend more to be down near the bottom. But all it is a slow lift, just to get those jigs a slow, a realistic, lifelike action. Just all it is really giving the jigs some lifelike imitation without doing too much to it. It's almost less is more with this. In the boat, you could basically just dead stick these jigs if the boat's rocking a little bit, but also make sure you don't want it sitting perfectly still. As I'm working the jigs, especially in deeper water and starting off the day, I'll slowly work it through the water column. Aside from the slow lifting and dropping motion that you're going to do, sometimes I'll add a slow reel in between just to figure out where the squid are sitting in the water column. Some days they're right on the bottom, sometimes at night they come up right to the surface, so just finding where they're hanging and adjusting to that as the day or night goes on. The light action of the rod comes into play with detecting the squid bite. You aren't really going to feel a hard hit or a hard thump. Sometimes you might get a slight tick in the rod if they hit it pretty aggressively. Most most of the time it's just going to be you're doing the slow jigging motion, and it's going to feel a little heavier or a little laggy when you're lifting. You can get the cadence of it, and you're going to feel something's on there. It's not really going to be that hard hit. And once you feel that, you're not going to want to set the hook. You aren't going to want to reel up really quick. Everything is nice and easy with this. Just slowly reel it up. Don't rip the spikes out of the tentacles. Sometimes you'll have the squid only by 1 or 2 tentacles in the spike, and if you set the hook or reel it up really fast, it's going to rip out of it and you're going to lose it. So just slowly reel it up, flip it over the rail if you're on a bridge, get it in the boat if you're on a boat, and you got one. Aside from the traditional high-low rig that most of the time you'll be using when squid fishing, the Shimano Sophia clinch jig with its integrated chin weight has opened up a new opportunity and a different way to catch the squid, kind of that aligns more with our traditional fishing methods. You're able to fish this jig like a single lure. On this, I just have it tied onto a normal fluorocarbon leader. I switched up to a little longer rod to get casting distance out of it. This is the Shimano Travala 7-foot light, paired again with a Spheros 5000. As you can tell, I run Spheroses on almost all of my inshore setups now. They really have become my inshore workhorse reel, and for the money, you can't beat them. I've used them anything stripers, albies, squid, and I've been really happy with them. And again, this is just another one of my lighter inshore setups that I transfer over to squid fishing. So for this technique, just have it tied on a single jig, and when fishing docks, bridges, or on a boat, and when the squid are up in the lights at night, you're able to pitch or cast this jig, let it sink down. It sinks at about 1.5 feet for every 2 seconds, so you're able to count it down 10 seconds, 15 seconds, or if they're right on the surface, you're able to work it right across the surface, cast it out, twitch it like the walk the dog motion. This jig works just like a normal lure, and you're able to catch them like any other fish that we fish for rather than the traditional high-low squid jigging. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any other questions about squid fishing, you can drop them in the comments or contact me directly. If you want to get out fishing, squid fishing, inshore, offshore, you can find me through East Coast Charters. Find all your squid tackle at Saltwater Edge, and hopefully the season starts getting going soon.